We'll give it some time here as people come in. And I invite you as you're coming in to this, if you want to put your name and where you're coming in from in the chat, that would be great. Would love that. Love to see where you all are coming from. And we'll just give it a few moments. So where you're calling in from or where you're coming in from. And yeah, a hello to you all. So if for those of your friends that couldn't make today, we are recording this and it will go out in the near future after the wonderful volunteers at the Psychedelic Association of Canada get deal with it and get it out there for us. So I'm Dr. Pamela Crisco. Thank you all for joining today. I am one of the founding board members of the Psychedelic Association of Canada, and I'm the current board chair. And want to let you all know that the Psychedelic Association of Canada is pretty much like a 99.9% volunteer-run organization. We have amazing volunteers that help with all the stuff that you see coming out through our newsletter, through the website, through the membership site, and all these webinars. And we have one amazing paid person, and this is Cheryl. And Cheryl is such a delight. She's our community manager, and she's the one that's actually making sure all the hamster wheels are running in the background today for this webinar. So thank you, Cheryl, and thank you to all the volunteers at the Psychedelic Association of Canada. Got a few announcements before we get going. So we have some upcoming events on Friday, March 20th. Many of you from British Columbia may know that there's a bit of a controversy going on with the social workers and regulation. So we have a big panel coming on March 20th. So take a look for that on our website and in our newsletter. You'll see that, and we encourage you to join. It's about regulation and how social workers are being regulated in relation to psychedelics. We have a great panel lined up. And if you know of any social worker friends out there, they might want to join, even if they're in another province. And then we have a new therapist series that we are starting. And all these talks in the therapist series are really going to be hitting some of the more challenging topics in psychedelic therapy. So if you're a therapist or thinking of being a therapist, this series is for you. So the first one coming up, we're hitting it hard. This is with Pat Song. She is absolutely wonderful. And we're going to be talking about transference and countertransference, but specifically erotic transference and countertransference, which all the therapists out there know is a part of therapy and something we need to talk about outright with the lights on and really hit it head on. So join us for the first in our therapist series coming up. That's April 9th, and you can find all the details for that also in newsletters and on the website. And then from one of our last webinars not too long ago with lawyer Paul Lewin, we invite you to help support this absolutely historical case that is going through, that he is taking through. So it's freedom of thought. Our charter writes freedom of thought and the freedom of thought to use psilocybin to access your own thoughts. So we'll be putting that in the chat. There's a GoFundMe that we are raising money. We got to the first benchmark. Woohoo! That's great. That means we can proceed with the appeal, and there's a whole bunch of benchmarks coming up. So please, if you can, pitch in $10 and share it widely with all the therapists. This will be the fastest way that we will be legally accessing psilocybin in Canada. So your $10 or $20 or $1,000 could go a long way so that we can do a really great job, or more accurately, lawyer Paul Lewin can do a really great job with his team taking this psilocybin case to court at the level that it needs to be. And so again, I'm Dr. Pamela Crisco. I'm coming to you from the unceded territory of the Klahoos First Nations. I'm absolutely honored to be an invited guest here. And today I'm thrilled because we have Brad Necyk with us today, who is not only a multidimensional talented artist in so many ways, but also a fantastic human being of a person. And it's been a delight. I think we've known each other for, I think, 3-ish, 4 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just such a delight knowing you. And I'm so glad that we're here for psychedelic storytelling. So first off, why don't you tell everyone about you? Give us your bio or
Yeah.
your short bio about you, and then we'll jump into some really interesting questions. And for everyone watching, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A, and we'll make sure that these ones get to Brad as well. So the structure today, before I shut up and hand it over to Brad, is we've got some conversation and Brad's brought some clips. So we're going to be watching a few short clips, 3 short clips possibly. And I'm really excited. So over to you, Brad. Tell us.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks, Pam. And yeah, so I'm Dr. Brad Necyk. I'm an artist, a filmmaker, a writer. Uh, Pam and I co-founded the Psychedelic Puppet Show nonprofit about 3 years ago, actually, right in March. So 3 years ago now, is sort of the official beginning of the Psychedelic Puppet Show. And for me, I've really been passionate about non-ordinary states of consciousness throughout my whole life. I've lived with bipolar disorder, so I really was sort of thinking about it through a mental health lens for a number of years, focusing on my BFA and my MFA. That was really the subject of my work. And then when I finished that in 2015, I went and did a PhD in psychiatry, not as a clinician but as a mental health researcher. And I remember my supervisor let me in to the department and he said, I think an artist could do really amazing work in mental health. And so that was kind of the beginning of me really formalizing that practice, and it really expanded my artistic practice those years of doing my postdoc. And then after that, I was doing a postdoctoral fellowship at York University, where I had a lot of resources. I had a lot of time to really explore things that I was passionate about. And so some of the things I'm really passionate about are consciousness, culture, and technology. And so this was an opportunity where I could really dive into not just the pressing things that I'm really excited about around consciousness and non-ordinary states of consciousness, which psychedelics and madness are a really interesting component of, but I was also really interested in technology. And so I started exploring early applications of artificial intelligence in all kinds of different ways in my creative practices, making images, using large language models to write, and then eventually video models started coming out. And then so I started making films, and I was able to essentially turn my art studio that I'm sitting in right now into like a little movie production studio. And this computer behind me actually right now runs with agents, like AI agents doing research for me on my next book. So I really integrated technology and really emergent technology in my creative practice. And so a lot of the films that we're going to take a look at are using some of these emerging tools. Some of them actually, to me, look a little dated now because the tools have changed since I originally made them. But they're really laborious pieces that take a long time to make. They take probably about a month to make each one of these pieces. They're very hand stitched together. Every single frame, every single word, every cut is kind of really planned and very intentional. And so it's a really kind of fun thing to show some of these films and sort of how they were made. Oh, Pam, you're muted right now.
Yes, I'm usually pretty good at that, not being muted. But so you kind of, there's actually 2 clarifying things I want you to tell everybody. So you said a BFA and an MFA. Those stand for?
Oh yeah, Bachelor of Fine Arts, Masters of Fine Arts, and then a PhD in psychiatry.
Thank you. And then also you're like, you've done so much. So tell us more, a little bit more about all the different modalities. Like you've written a book, you're
Yeah.
writing another book, you work in a lot of other modalities. And then let's go into why, like, let's talk about why storytelling and psychedelics is such a great connection.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. Yeah, like for my training, like I did traditional art training, and my main focus was painting, drawing, and sculpture, and it was really focused on figurative art. So I don't think there's anything in my back that you can see, but there's a number of large, like hyper photorealistic paintings around me. This is the one I'm working on right now, but he's only just being begun. He's just sort of in an early stage, and then you can't really see, but there's one there that's a photorealistic one of a dancer I work with a lot. But so I paint. I don't sculpt as much anymore, but when I was doing my graduate work, I started really like I've always loved computers, I've always loved technology, but it didn't feel accessible to me. But really over the course of my career, over the past 15 years, more and more tools left, Hollywood studios or wherever they might be housed, and all of a sudden regular people could have access to them. And a lot of the tools I use are open source. I build a lot of my own tools now because I can code with the assistance of large language models, anything in my imagination. Like it's remarkable what you can create right now with, an imagination and an internet connection. And so, yeah, I move a lot. I do actually, I had a quote that I was going to read, but I do have my book. I wrote that after my PhD. It's called All Sky, Mirror Ocean. And really what it's about is it's a story about mental illness, art, and healing. And so it takes a lot of the things that I did during my doctoral work. I went to the Arctic and into Iqaluit and spent time with Indigenous suicide survivors. And we made these artworks together while I ran a workshop there. I spent a lot of time with head and neck cancer patients, transplant patients. And then I spent a lot of time living in a psychiatric hospital. So I was in the children's unit and I was in the bipolar unit. And so it weaves all of those stories along with my own lived experience of bipolar disorder. And it's really also a reflection of the power of art and the power of storytelling. Like my PhD dissertation was called Telling Stories Otherwise. And so it was really about using the power of story and especially because I was in a science department. And, like one of my favorite quotes is that science explicates, facts, and poetry implicates meaning. And so for me, what I was doing when I was in a science department, my committee were psychiatrists. And, I kind of had to really almost validate myself in a certain way. So I had to sort of find the right language and the right tools to really say these artworks, these plays, these films, these paintings that I'm making, are serious contributions to mental health research. And I think I was able to communicate that. And when it comes to psychedelics, like I always say on a personal note, they changed my life. It was something that came up in my PhD because I was in a neuroscience department and I needed to have some kind of neuroscience recognition. So I was looking at creativity and neuroscience and looking at different regions of the brain, different networks, and I was kind of going through a lot of papers, and I came across. It was Robin Carhart Harris's and his team's paper, The Entropic Brain. And that one, when I read it, I was like, oh, these are all the regions of creativity that I was looking at. But it also had these great sections where it would be like looking at Carl Jung or William James. And so tying it back into like other deeper areas of understanding the mind. And so it wasn't just about like, exciting or inhibiting certain areas of the brain, but it actually was tying to a lot of the philosophical and like psychology based things that I was really interested in. And so I figured might as well experiment to see what this is all about because I'm an artist and I thought, I'm learning about these phenomenological experiences, and it improved my mental health in like a life-changing way. Like there's no other way to say it. Like I'm a different person. And it was a lot of things that went in that all came in that period: therapy, eating well, exercising, like, all these things that people say, but they all kind of converged at the same time with psychedelics. And I just felt immense gratitude. I also felt that it was completely misunderstood when I included psychedelics in my dissertation. People thought it was like really weird and I shouldn't be doing that. And it felt kind of taboo. But I felt really passionate that I felt, okay, like I feel like this is a really sort of stigmatized or mystified area of serious consciousness exploration and serious scientific and mental health research. And so when I met Pam, I happened to go to the Canadian Psychedelic Summit, and we both were dreaming of making change in the world, making, demystifying, destigmatizing, so that psychedelic experiences so they can be accessible. And we thought maybe one of the great ways to do it would to support artists to make art. And it's hard to get people motivated with something that's just an idea. So I figured I might as well incorporate this in my own art practice. And so I started making some of the early psychedelic puppet pieces, one with Paul Stamets and Rick Doblin, that was really interesting, with like really early artificial intelligence tools that are quite funny to watch now. But I think that, stories are powerful, and like we live and breathe in stories. Like we have our own narrator in our head that's telling us stories, that's shaping the way that the felt experience around us, the saliency, the way we integrate it into us and remember it. And art, I think art does change the world. One of my favorite quotes from Thomas King is, you want a different ethic, tell a different story. And I always heard it in my head as want a different world, tell a different story. And so that's what's always something that's really resonated to me, is that the powers of stories. And, stories, they can promise some futures and conceal others. So it's like really important, the kinds of stories that we build our worlds with. And some of these stories are old and dated, and some need to be re-remembered in certain ways. Like they're great stories that we've used as a species across thousands to hundreds of thousands of years. And so when it comes to the psychedelic movement and all kinds of different mental health, like anything that's really stigmatized, I really think that science is important. We look at the discussions around a lot of the studies that have been coming out around PTSD and depression and anxiety and addiction, and the results are amazing. But things are still really moving really slowly. Like I remember reading those studies back in 2018 when I first getting involved in this area, and we're in 2026. Like it's 8 years, and it's just like I'm pulling out my hair, being like, why aren't people cluing into this? Like this is remarkable. Like we could be saving lives right now. We could be changing the world. Like one of the things when I talk to Paul Stamets, he always says to me, psychedelics makes kinder people. It's not just about solving mental health, but it's also about living a full, thriving life. And so for me, and like this is something that Pam and I really resonate on, is the power that maybe stories and art, like I said before, poetry implicates. Like they say that if a journalist and a poet saw the same event, a journalist might describe it more accurately, but a poet will uncover the deeper truth. And so I think that's really what I'm after in the art that I make, and the artists that we support through the Psychedelic Puppet Show.
Brad, you just have so much wealth and of depth. It's fantastic. I love listening to you go through so beautifully. Should we show something?
Yeah, let's show something. I think what I'm going to show, I don't think I've really ever showed this one too much. So one of the people that I work with, that I make just about all my films, I do some independently, but I work with Jason Silva. And so Jason is really known as like a unbelievable, like almost like lyrical poet, the way that he speaks, and he's able to synthesize really beautiful ideas. And him and I have written and directed, and I animate them, a lot of these short films. And one of the things that really resonated with him when he started seeing the initial psychedelic puppet pieces was he saw that in these puppets, they were sort of like avatars for the ineffable. Like they were somehow able to like bring you deeper into some of these experiences through absurdity and through play and through wonder. And so he got a lot of joy that we could simultaneously be talking about something that's very serious, but in a playful way. And it seems to really resonate with people. I know it resonates with me. And so the one that I want to show, Jason, he showed this idea to me a number of times where he really thought about the psychedelic experience. Like we should give patients this before they go on a trip to kind of let them know what's about to happen. And so he really thought about it. Like Jason hates flying, so he also wants to do some therapy on himself to think about flying. So he wrote this script about sort of liking the psychedelic experience to take off and cruising altitude and landing and so on. And I think it's a really fun piece. And then he really asked me to just paint it in the most surreal, wonderful way. And so this is one that we did last July, and actually I think it was our most watched piece ever to this date so far. So it was so I think I'll share that one. Let me get set up here.
All aboard Edgar Airlines. Good evening, passengers. You are now boarding Flight 888 to the mythopoetic subconscious, a round-trip voyage through the inner atmosphere of symbol and soul. Your pilot is Captain Edgars, licensed facilitator of altered state aviation. Chief cabin attendant is Mervyn, a puppet, a grief whisperer, FAA certified in ego disintegration. Please direct your attention to the following safety protocol. All unresolved traumas must be stored in the overhead bin. Heavier repressions may be checked at the gate. If forgiveness begins to leak, a puppet in a chromatic leotard will appear with a butterfly net. This flight is non-linear. Chronometric cognition must be disabled. Temporal logic should be set aside. Please switch all devices to poetic mode. As we prepare for takeoff, Captain Edgar reminds you, the ego does not like acceleration. You may feel panic, a psychic clench, a sudden urge to check your inbox. That's just the veil resisting lift. And now, ignition. Engines ignite with the sound of children's laughter. The fuselage groans with imagination. Memories shuffle. The aisle becomes a Mobius strip. Mervyn, now dressed as a Freudian cloud wearing nipple tassels, offers tissues for spontaneous weeping. As we ascend, perspectives warp. Emotional turbulence is expected. Allow it. We have now reached cruising altitude, 33,000 feet above habitual thought. Seatbelt signs dissolve. You may now unbuckle your psyche and freely explore the cabin of consciousness. On your left window, notice the Great Plains of Repression. Manicured lawns hiding kinky erotic jungles. On your right side, see the Benedictine monks sobbing into golden violins while reading Carl Jung aloud, their petrified tears achingly beautiful. Feel free to join them via parachute. As we enter the zone of expressive liberation, your assigned archetype will slowly descend from the ceiling. Fatima, in seat 22B, becomes a phoenix in full makeup. George in 14C sings opera to his abandoned inner child. Lights dim. We now pass through the layer of incomprehensible absurdity. A puppet delivers a TED talk on déjà vu while juggling clocks and projecting your repressed dreams onto a flaming PowerPoint. We refuel mid-air on liquid nostalgia. And then, weightlessness. Time folds like warm origami. Passengers rise from their seats, not with effort, but with forgiveness. Mervyn floats by, weeping into a chalice filled with old love letters. Captain Edgar removes his aviators, his eyes filled with starlight and holy regret. A businessman in 5C forgives his parents and sobs uncontrollably while hugging a psychedelic puppet. Laughter and weeping become indistinguishable. All contradictions dissolve into strange geometries and radiant splendor. The aircraft becomes translucent. You can see the sky inside each other. No one claps, but everyone understands. Descent begins. Identities recongeal. Dream logic integrates. Please return your psyche to the upright position. We land definitely not where we began. Thank you for flying Flight 888. Until next time, stay slightly unfastened.
Yeah, so that was always a fun one for me to watch. I haven't seen that in a while.
That is fine. So, okay, there's two things there that, well, there's many things, but two things that really sort of like, you may feel that urge to check your cell phone. Like,
Yeah.
that is just brilliant, and return your psyche to the
Yeah. Upright position. Yeah.
phenomenal. So, how long did it take you to make that? You said a month?
Yeah, it was like I think they spent the month of July, more or less, making that one.
How
Yeah.
many hours, when you say the month, like how many hours did it take you to, so
Uh
is that Jason narrating and you're using his words, or is it?
Yeah, so it's Jason wrote it, and then I use a tool to use a synthetic narrator. So we use all kinds of different narrators that have different sort of feels. This is one of our favorites. He's like the David Attenborough, like you're in BBC World, like looking at something, like some beautiful landscape or some animal at a distance. So it's like this very objective observer talking about a deeply subjective experience, and I think that's why he works so well. And then as for time, I work throughout the day. I can't just sit here for like 8 hours animating. It's just too much computer. It's too much. So I move throughout my day. I'll animate for an hour here, there. And then my favorite time to animate is like right before bed. You're starting to get like dreamy. And so like I really fall into certain images. Like the one where it like becomes a whole bunch of still images that move really quickly was one of those like almost falling asleep realizations that it's like, oh no, we need to leave like regular 24 frames per second and like fall into one frame per or one image per frame kind of thing. So yeah,
Mhm.
it takes a bit for sure.
So a question about that, as a physician, I'm thinking about this. So right before bedtime and you start doing all this creativity, and then do you sleep or do you just keep working through that like that? It does not compute to me somehow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it's like it does wind me down oddly. Like there's certain ways like I can't do a lot of things. Like I couldn't be writing or like doing that, but like for whatever reason, like right at the end of the day, like I like looking at my art. Like I when I was writing my book, I remember every night I would lay there outside and I would read different pages and I was just it's just like a dreamier time to be creative for me. And then when I find when I'm making images, like I don't take it too seriously. So I'm just sort of like moving and testing out ideas. And then I usually solidify things during the day kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of controversy, all sides, multiple angles, multiple viewpoints on AI and AI art. And let's go right into the elephant in the room on that sort of stuff. So how do you first off look at generally bigger AI stuff, and then
Mm.
also then how you're using it? I want to dance around here a little bit. So let's start with
Yeah.
that. Like you're because you've had some not so great encounters with people's reaction
Yeah.
to AI. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll say why I got involved with AI is I've been a digital media artist for 15 years and it's the emerging digital medium. Like it's new. And I always played with the newest things. Like when I first got access to 3D animation software back in 2015, I was blown away and I made films and I made all these artworks because I was like, oh my God, I can like make my own world. I don't have to be in a movie studio like Pixar or, Marvel movies or whatever. Like I can actually sit in my house with a relatively powerful computer and manifest my imagination. And so for me as an artist, it's another tool to start to push and pull and break and figure out its poetics and figure out its aesthetics and so for me, I find it very exciting. And what I'd say is I've been using it and is integrating it into my art practice for about 4 years now, maybe almost 4 or 5 years now, and I've been teaching it this whole time. So and the tools are always shifting and changing, so I'm always teaching new things. And I'd say the start of 2025 was the beginning of like the hyperpolarization that I experienced with AI. Before that, like, students and I, we have discussions, like we were able to have dialogue when I show films, like, Jason and I would go and we'd be able to talk about these things and people would come up, be like, I'm really afraid of, the environmental impacts. I'm really afraid of, using data sets that people didn't consent to their art being part of. I'm really afraid of job displacement, and we'd be able to have conversations about that. And those are really important things to me. Like I'm not like a AI maximalist that it's like everything's going to be perfect all the time forever. Let's just go on this ride. Like I have a lot of worries. I worry about the use of artificial intelligence in, Venezuela and Iran, like through the military right now. I really worry about, companies like Block laying off 45% of their staff in one go because they don't need them because artificial intelligence, if they have a handful of employees using it well, they can replace that many people. All the big tech companies are laying off white collar jobs left, right, and center. Um, yeah, that I worry about those things. I worry about climate. Like I've been somebody that's been a big climate advocate for a long time. A lot of my art practice was focused on landscape that was focused on climate and our shifting world. And, these data centers use a tremendous amount of resources. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about. And I hold all of that. I hold that in me as I use these tools to make art. Um, so I worry about all those things, but at the same time, as an artist, I've never been more alive than I am right now using these tools. Like the speed that I'm able to manifest my imagination and the ways that I'm like, because I use AI different than other people. People are always like, how did you get these images? How did you do this and that? And I think I have a certain disposition for navigating the latent space. And so if people don't know what the latent space is, like what an AI model is it's like a 1500 dimensional, like we're only used to the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time. But these things have like 1500 or more dimensions within them. And it's a giant map. And so like once an AI model is trained, every single possible image, like more than there are images, there's more images in an AI model than there are atoms in the universe. Like, and so for me, I figured out a way of working with it with language to navigate that and find my way to images that surprise me, yet feel inevitable for what I'm hoping to manifest with my imagination and my heart and my soul. And so I feel like really, really excited. And one thing that Jason always says to me is his this Terence McKenna quote, which is roughly that the world is made of words, and if we know the words the world is made of, we can make of it what we want. And so for me, with prompting and the ways that I use images and I use language to navigate through that tremendous map, like I feel like a cartographer in a certain way. I've never been able to manifest my imagination in this kind of way, with at this speed, with this amount of joy, while at the same time holding space for the things that I'm really scared of about it. And, I don't like, one of the things that I've always loved was this Deleuze, who's a French philosopher, said that artists aren't supposed to answer questions. They're supposed to enrich ongoing conversations. And so for me, like playing with these tools, pushing and pulling them, figuring out promising things about them, while also holding space that there's a lot of perilous things. I don't know. I feel like that's just my role. Marshall McLuhan, who was a media theorist, a Canadian media theorist, likened the artist to a distant early warning system that's here to warn the culture what's about to happen to it. And so for me, this is part of my ethical bend, is I feel that I need to, as a digital media artist that has a proclivity for technology and I'm able to navigate this latent space, I feel that I have to play with these tools, because I can't just put my head in the sand and pretend like they're not going to transform the world around us. Like there's literally no stopping it. So why not have artists pushing and pulling, breaking it, figuring out its poetics, figuring out its aesthetics? Like I don't want to leave that to Sam Altman and a bunch of computer programmers that have no poetic disposition to figure out. And I think that's what artists have always done. Artists have always been in the frontier. They go first often, and they break things, and they figure out new potential ways that these can be applied. And so for me, like I play with those tools with all of that in my heart.
What I love about what you just talked about, Brad, is how you can hold the complexity of it. It's not this or that. It's this and this and this
Mhm.
and this and this and this. And that is really part of the psychedelic world, right? Is that
Mm.
we can hold multi-dimensionality in our thoughts. That's why you can, people that are very psychedelically aware and have done their work, they can hold kindness while being in a disagreement,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can they can notice that they're feeling uncomfortable but still lean in. There's these things that psychedelics do for the community, including what you talked about, with Paul's quote of making kinder people. And that's
Yeah.
what we're all here. And I think that's why so many people are so drawn to psychedelics, because of these transformations that we get to have. And what I see in the work that you do, because I work in a psychedelic assisted therapy program, um, you bring this thing that we kind of see. It's not quite what we see, and we can't put it down in words. It's so often like the artists in the Amazon basin that put those visions to canvas, put those visions to
Mm.
tapestries, and you go, yes, that's what ayahuasca showed me. Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. And I see a lot of what you're doing kind of bring that weirdness that we see
Yeah.
in these things that are not really connected, but they're so connected. And you kind
Mhm.
of give this visual. So yes, I could totally see it, as you had mentioned earlier with Jason in your conversation about this. It's not, your psychedelic journey is not going to be like this.
Yeah.
It could be something like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's actually some data, and I don't know if you know about this, more about it. I can't remember who did it, but they showed how much we could prime folks going into a psychedelic session by what we showed them ahead of time. So if they're
Mm.
greeted lovingly and they're with caring, and they don't have to worry about parking, and they can walk in and what they see is beautiful and artistic, that will help their journey, whatever they're dealing with, be
Yeah.
more gentle. and
Yeah.
they're rushing in. And anyway, so the
Well, I
artist,
don't recommend watching that video necessarily before psychedelic, the one
no,
that
but
we
maybe
made, but
after for
maybe
inspiration,
after or like, yeah,
maybe
I don't know if
after
that's the right
for
set and setting, but
a few
yeah.
sessions. But again, back to the polarization, right? It's, I just love how you so beautifully demonstrated it doesn't have to be polarizing. We can love the artistry of something. We can love that it
Yeah.
helps us not have to have 10 hours of paperwork at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And we can be very concerned about the impact on climate and the impact on jobs and the impact on who's running the world and where we're going with it, and we have
Yeah.
to say. So thank you
Yeah.
for demonstrating that
Yeah.
so beautifully. And so talk about, I want to go backwards and forwards a little bit here, but really, like, so much of what we know about psychedelics comes from artists,
Mm.
cave art, paintings. You want to talk about that? Like, what this is to me feels why this project, the Psychedelic Puppet Show, the work you and Jason are doing together is so important, because artists really tell us what has happened in this world before we came
Hmm.
here and into the future. So
Hmm.
your thoughts on
Hmm.
that?
Yeah, it's a funny thing being an artist. Like I don't know, like I wasn't like one of the things that was on my list of things to do is just something that happened to me in my life, I guess, because I couldn't fit in to regular world because I think I just had something I needed to express. And that's why I went to art school to figure out how to do that. And like I'm a lover of um artistic history. Like one of my favorite parts about going to art school was art history, and we would go all the way back to just early sculptural like rocks that were just shaped and embellished, and we would look at cave paintings that were like in a cave, and these paintings accumulated over like 1,000 years. So we're thinking of like 100 generations or like 80 generations of people that lived and breathed and shared and added and experienced together this experience. And like I really believe that art is like an evolutionarily grounded behavior. Like to make art is one of the most fundamental things that makes us human, in my opinion. Like like I remember thinking of it in very like capitalist ways, like, oh, we have so much of our resources figured out, so some people have extra time to embellish our lives, and they decorate and they paint things and things like that. And it never really felt true to me that it was just something extra because we've figured out some stuff and we got a little extra time on our hands. It felt a lot more fundamental, like the fact that these people tens of thousands of years ago would carry around all these objects across generations and maintain objects, and you can tell the way that they interacted over 1,000 years with similar things and built on top, that there's something more powerful here. And so for me, like I really do believe that people are creative and aesthetic beings. Like I feel that everybody has an innate disposition to be creative, or to at least be moved by creativity. Whether like my wife's a scientist and she always says like I don't have any creative skill. But it's like when I listen to her tell a story, I'm like, that's really creative, because there was all these things that went on in your life and you had to distill it down so that you're honing into core details that add to the narrative, that there's an arc that you bring people through. So I think we all are creative in our own way. And I think that, art, takes the everyday and makes it sacred. It takes the ordinary and makes it extraordinary, and it's really about making like our existence special. And I think it's like really important. And it does really bum me out that, yes, in Canada we have grants, but I'm sitting on the Canada Council grant jury right now. Like I had a meeting yesterday, I got another one tomorrow, and we're evaluating grants. And there's so much good work and so many people that are really expressing themselves, and they just can't do it because there's just not enough funding. And I'm feeling that as an artist right now. Like, oh my God, like there's just like, no matter how many millions of views we get on these videos, it doesn't amount to anything financial to help make the next one, And so it is like, I kind of miss, obviously I wasn't there, but these days and the Renaissance where you'd have emperors and merchants like funding all these artists, and you would just have like, I watched the movie Amadeus with my kids about Mozart. And he had patrons, he had a salary, and he just had to make art. And I'm like, why don't we do this anymore? Because it makes the world a better place. And like, think about the things that we are funding. Like, we're watching the same TV show, cops, doctors, legal dramas, over and over and over and over again, you know? And it's just like, I'm like, there's so many more interesting things to explore all around us if we just opened up and opened up some economic activity around it. But that's a little side tangent, but it's something that I'm really thinking and feeling a lot right now, especially sitting on this jury, because I know only a fraction of the people that are amazing are going to get any funding. And I know how much that funding matters, but art, it's powerful. Storytelling's powerful. Stories pass. They change the way we think about the world. I know that I get met all the time with contrarian views, and I really try to stay open and be and accommodate it in myself and be like, do I need to rethink through some of my biases, through some of my preconceived notions, but sometimes like facts don't sometimes do that. Like a really great chart doesn't necessarily do that, but like a really great story, can really move you. It moves you in like a limbic, like in an emotional way. It moves past like your prefrontal cortex to your higher level thinking and hits you somewhere much more deeper, much more ancient. And I think that's one of the ways that we're going to make lasting change, whether it's psychedelics or it's climate or it's, equality. And I think it's going to be through stories.
Mhm. And even in science, stories often are what move the bar. We can get
Mm,
stuck. We talk about psilocybin legalization in Canada. We can get stuck, but when people get in front of policymakers and tell stories and they touch
mhm.
the heart, things start to move. So these
Yeah,
stories are incredibly important and they're part of all of us. And we do that when we publish too, right? We'll publish, okay, here's the numbers and here's the stories that go with those numbers.
yeah,
Those We have this artificial thing that I think is starting to dissolve, especially because of psychedelic research in science, is that the full person, the full story matters just as much as those numbers. And
yeah,
you need both. And psychedelics is allowing all that to come back, that people can come back into wholeness. You don't have to be
mhm.
this or that. You don't have to believe this or that. You can be multifactorial and
Yeah,
and express this. And back to the cave art, one of the things that we know so much, for staying on the topic of psilocybin for a moment, is we know so much more about the world use of psilocybin because of art. We know it because of
mm,
what the Druids made with psilocybe semilantiida, and we know what the Mazateks in Oaxaca did because of Maria Sabina and the art there and the songs there. And then the cave art in Spain and in Africa, like there's mushrooms and we see them, and they were clearly important to some level. We see them in the hieroglyphics in Egypt.
yeah,
We see it all over in India. We see this, and it's because of the artist's representation of this that we can go, wow, this is part of our heritage of this planet to
yeah,
access mushrooms. So,
yeah.
so thank you, artists, for doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Thank you, artists. I
So thank
know.
you.
Well, maybe 10,000 years they'll be looking at some of Jason and I strange films and
Yeah.
thinking
And it
about
goes
our relationship.
and it goes back to also something you said there, like the funding, like so important. Like that, I want to move that a little bit into the psychedelic puppet show too, but also like these AI companies are amassing. I don't even know the numbers of dollars that they're amassing,
Yeah,
and and they should be giving back. Like it's purely extraction, right? It's just
yeah,
extraction, extraction, extraction. And how can that feel complete? Like there needs to be that circle, right? If you're going to take, you need to give.
yeah.
That energy needs to flow, and that artistry and that money needs to come back to the artists. We need
When
the
I don't think I think they're really missing an opportunity to have artists playing with the tools as part of like sponsored by their company, because artists are gonna like, I use tools very differently than they intended them to be used. I break, I hack them, I figure out new ways, new workflows, and like it just seems so like such a missed opportunity for a lot of these companies to not be supporting people just to use their imaginations to build things with them, you
yeah,
know? So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Imagination centers everywhere where
Mhm.
people can come and play and, like you said, break things and figure that
Yeah.
out. Let's well, do you want to talk about the funding modality at the psychedelic puppet show, or do you want to show another film first? Which way would you like to?
Maybe we'll show another piece. I'm trying to think
Okay.
which one. So I've got um We'll show one that Jason and I did that was in a collaboration with a European group that was trying to get 1 million signatures to bring it to the European legislature or whatever, however their government sort of fully functions. And so they brought us in, and Jason wrote this script, and this one, so this one doesn't have puppets, it's not absurd, but I thought it'd be like another example of like the ways that we can tell stories to move the needle a little bit. So maybe I'll share that one.
What was the campaign, Brad?
It was, let me just see here. I'm trying to remember. It's been a bit since I did this. It was the psychedelicare.eu, the Citizens Initiative for the Mind. And so they're trying to get 1 million signatures. I think they succeeded last January, and it's going to go. But yeah, working on fixing our sort of legislation around it. So I'll share this just as another example of ways that we can use stories in all kinds of ways to communicate.
Meet the patient, an emblem of our age, an avatar of despair. Their thoughts circle like vultures over the same emotional carcass, ruminating nonstop. Each day repeats intrusively. Antidepressants, they muffle the noise, but not the narrator. The problem isn't just biochemistry, it's the lens of perception itself. That warped glass of self through which all experience is seen. Enter psychedelics, emissaries of neuroplastic grace. They lower the eye mask and they whisper, "Let go." We're going upstream of story. Darkness unfolds into radiance. A cathedral of neurons lights up. The self liquefies. Time breathes sideways. Memories shimmer like translucent veils. Then, clarity. The lens of perception itself comes into view. It's a moment of revelation. The patient sees the seer. Trauma's fingerprints reveal themselves as etched on expectation. And suddenly, release. The hinge turns, the world floods in, unfiltered. Tears of recognition follow. Ordinary medicine numbs the lens. This medicine polishes it, reveals it, dispenses it once it no longer serves us, flooding the psyche with the infinite light that was always passing through.
Yeah. So, yeah, I thought I'd show just another type of storytelling that Jason and I have done.
Wow, what a powerful piece to be able to put there. And they've got the signatures. Maybe we should ask them if we can borrow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would let us. Yeah.
Let us borrow that in Canada. There is a question. I'll ask you this. And
Sure.
answer only what the part you want to answer, if you want to answer it all. Let me ask, which psychedelics do you use? And are these images from any particular trip or trips you have experienced?
Yeah,
Only answer
yeah,
what you want.
so yeah. No, the only like other than cannabis, which I consider like a different kind of psychedelic experience, but is just psilocybin. So from a whole mushroom kind of experience, and that's been kind of my go-to. And it's been quite a number of years since I've actually done like a proper psychedelic journey. But I use like a microdosing regime to sort of just keep my overall mental health and my overall just central nervous system feeling good and regulated and massaged, I guess, kind of. So that and yeah, one thing people always ask is, am I on psychedelics when I make art? And no, the creative process is psychedelic enough that I don't need anything else. Maybe a little bit of cannabis from time to time, but like it helps sort of add to the saliency. But it's not like it's a very sober experience for me to make art.
Mhm. So the project that we met over or co-created was the Psychedelic Puppet Show.
Mhm.
tell me your vision of it, and the why of it, and what the hope is, and what's been accomplished so far, and the vision looking forward.
Yeah, well, I think we wanted to try. Well, I know when I came there, what emerged, we were at this really interesting psychedelic summit where, we're doing all these kind of group, like just like disrobing kind of like exercises. So
Not
the very
literally,
last,
not literally,
yeah, not literally, sorry,
emotionally.
emotionally, yeah, sorry, and egoly and all that. But it was a very disrobing time. And I remember being so open on that last day, and we're sitting and we're supposed to imagine what we're going to do over the next year. And Pam and I and a group of people were all there, and it just sort of very organically emerged from the collective. Like it wasn't like something that I went in with. I don't know if it was something that you went in with, but this idea that an art organization could do a lot of really good work in the psychedelic space, in the mental health space, and we all really, especially you and I, because you and I have stuck at this, that we really felt that there's this is important, and we need to figure that out. And so over the past 3 years, so it kind of began with Paul Stamets and Rick Doblin did a recording with Pam and I brought in a cinematographer friend of mine, and we made this really insane video. That's the very first
Which
psychedelic
still can
puppet
be seen.
episode,
People can
which
go
still
to
can be seen.
it's on. You can see it on YouTube, and I think in Instagram if you scroll back far enough, and on the website.
Yeah,
I think you can see
yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's pretty retro AI now.
It's pretty retro, but it's very cool. I think it'll go down in like AI art history as like a really unique experiment. But we've done some cool stuff. Like, and then one of the other things that Pam and I wanted, we wanted the art to get out there, and so we always had this vision of having like a food truck with an LED screen on the side of it. We go like from town to town, having these community gatherings and sharing art. And we don't have the LED truck yet because we don't have the money, but maybe we will at some point. But we have put on a number of film festivals, which is really nice. We've been to New York, we put them on Cortez Island, Vancouver, San Francisco, New York again recently, but we had to move it online because of um, a snowstorm. But we've actually been out in the community, and we put on these festivals, and we put out a call, and artists from around the world submit, and we pick the best films. And we have this kind of cool structure where we have a whole section that's like very visually dynamic, very experimental, music, visuals. We have a really meditative section where it's like really slow art, brings you down. We have a thought-provoking section that really kind of talks about almost more documentary style, but that are dealing with sort of ideas around mental health and psychedelics and history. And then we often end with something crazy that Jason and I did. But it's a really cool thing. And as a group, we were able to raise some money back in 2024 now that funded a few artists, a couple painters, video artists, an animator, to continue their art practices. Like, just you're doing great work, keep doing what you're doing. It's only a few $1,000s, but I still remember one of the artists that we gave it to. She was a former student of mine, and she was so grateful because she's got a young child, and she's like, I couldn't actually paint. I didn't have enough money for paints. And so like that, $1,000 actually made a big difference to her. And we've got lots of really interesting things on the go. Like, we're constantly trying to do things. We have a new initiative that we're just launching like the past couple of weeks, which is Fund a Question. And the idea is it's on our website if you go to the donate section. But the basic idea is that, like, we didn't want to be an administratively loaded organization where it's like all of our efforts are going to keeping our positions alive kind of thing. And so we moved, instead, we're really a volunteer base where.
Which is interesting because it's all volunteer. There's no paid.
Well, it is. Yeah, I know. It is all volunteer, but we didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is all volunteer.
Yeah.
But well, the idea is that people might actually have something in the psychedelic world that they want explored, and they want to find a filmmaker that'll do it. And so what we're asking is that if you have a burning question, and we have a list of questions too that are on the website that may be like, wow, that one really resonates. I'd love for an artist to explore that. But what we're doing is we're asking for that, and we have a set amount that we've talked to a number of filmmakers, and it's a good amount to get going with, which is just $5,000 US. And they'll make a short film from that. And so, and you can fund the question. You're the benefact, like you're going to be on the film as like the person that helped fund it. And so you can take one of the questions, or you can come in with any question that you want, and fund an artist exploring that for you and getting it out in the world. And we've got really amazing collaborators that love sharing our work. Jason Silva's got a huge reach. Paul Stamets has a huge reach. The Psychedelic Puppet Show itself is getting a bigger reach. So the work gets out there and is seen by people.
Mhm. Yeah. And there's I mean, it doesn't have to be a question either. It can be a story, right? And that going back to the origin story too, there was two other elements about it that I want to expand upon. One was um, there are psychedelics aren't new. We've had altered states across the globe in different formats. And what if we could have a format that invited those stories to come in from anywhere, any language, whatever story that needed to be told or wanted to be told could come forward. So artists from around the world, ideally in time, will be able to submit their work. And we chose puppets because puppets are ubiquitous and people they understand puppets. It doesn't have to be a puppet, but it can.
Yeah.
But this very accessible way of being able to tell a story in a way, and we hope that over time we'll hear voices from all over the world in their own voice, in their own way, in their own cadence, telling their story. And I think in the film festival, we did have people from different countries that submitted
Yeah.
their work, which was great to see very different styles of storytelling. And but the biggest part was we are going to, and we continue to try to do this, is funding artists. We so often artists don't make the money they should. Their art sells and then resells, and they don't get to reap the benefit of the resale value of their art. And we thought in our funding model is that 90% of any funds that come in go right back out to artists, that the organization doesn't keep it. In fact, the organization only keeps exactly what it needs to keep putting the stuff out there and hosting community events and getting people connected. But the whole idea is that the artists make the money, not anyone else. No one's making money off the artists. The artists are making money off themselves in a really good way. So, and I think that's unique. That's not a big thing because galleries take a much larger portion for
They
art.
take 50% of what an artist sells for. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you buy an art piece in a gallery, the artist is only getting 50% of that price.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So what else are you excited about then? Of all the projects you're working on, you've got your book, you've got what are the stories you want to tell? What are the ones that are just waiting to have some space to be told?
Yeah. Well, right now, one of the things I'm really interested in is thinking about the future, I think, and not just about mental health and psychedelics. That's a big part of it, but about climate, our relationship to the planet, the way we need to care and steward, and so I feel pulled, and not with any explicit project, but I feel pulled to working in that way again for a little bit. Jason and I are going to keep making films, puppet show films, but I feel a bit drawn in that. Another thing what Jason and I are working on is we did finish our 24-minute film, which is like a proof of concept for a TV series called the Psychedelic Puppet Show, and I think it's really interesting. We're just starting to screen in some film festivals. It's going to be screened in Italy next in May. We have some really interesting conversations with people in the industry, and like we're really hopeful to be able to bring that to life someday, so we could actually dedicate ourselves to what we want to say. And so that's a really big thing that I want to hopefully see realized. And then another thing that's really close is that I, on Vancouver Island, own an artist residency. So it's some of the things I love is bringing people from around the world, artists around the world, to this beautiful island. And I've got a house in Lake Cowichan. It's a really small, beautiful town on a lake in the river, and there's a river and the mountains, and it's in this really great sustaining town, grocery stores and everything close by. And so artists have been coming there for 3 years now, which is kind of wild to think that it's been alive for 3 years when I think back. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to start offering workshops at the residency. So one of the ones that I'm actually starting next week is an AI filmmaking workshop. So there's some people that are online, there's some people that are coming in person, and I'm going to be sort of teaching these workflows to make these films. And then I'm going to mentor them and help them make their own film. So it's not just like learn the tools, but like let's actually make art together. This fall in September, I'm bringing a previous resident that was here, and she's coming to teach a plein air workshop, which means outdoor painting. And so it's going to be going to all these stunning locations and rivers and forests and mountains to paint. And she's going to instruct you, if you don't know how to best do plein air painting, because there's like certain skills you need. And then one of the things that may be of interest to anybody here or watching at home is I want to do like a psychedelics, mental health, and storytelling workshop. And so that's going to be in the second half of October. And you'd be able to come stay at the residency. I'd be there. We'd be doing things, but really, like, I like talking about things, but my favorite part about being a teacher, and like when I teach at the university, is like working closely with people to realize their imagination and the things that they want to express. And so it'll be a lot of like hands-on, kind of like, okay, like what's going on with you? Let's try this. And it could be writing something, it could be creating a film, it could be starting a story. Like it can kind of be whatever you need it to be, but it'll be really about exploring the potential of storytelling in non-ordinary states of consciousness. So psychedelics and mental health will be kind of the two main themes.
What I like about what you're saying, Brad, is that this arc is very similar to also psychedelic training, right? The mentorship. You know, you're the teacher and you're working right alongside, right there with folks on that. And on that note, thank you. Yeah, Brad just put it in there. Who are the people on whose shoulders you stand upon? Like, who have been your teachers? Who have been your elders? Who are the ones that have really, you've mentioned some already, but who else has inspired you? Like, I think we need to try more and more to really honor those who came before us and whose shoulders we stand upon. So
Yeah.
who got you where you are? Or who do you want to?
Yeah. Well, definitely my parents and my wife. Obviously, like I was very unwell for many years, as like in my 20s and early 30s, and they saw me through that. And I got to the point where I could figure out how to thrive, and they were a big part of that. So definitely them and my children. I always think so fondly. So at the end, so the very first degree I have 4 degrees, but the very first one I did that I didn't mention, I did a business degree in economics. So I began, and I was doing philosophy and science and all these things, and I just happened to find my way into business school and focus on economics. But in my very last year, I had one first year class. I could take anything I wanted, and I said, oh, maybe I'll take an art class. And so I took this art class, and I was so lucky to have the most wonderful instructor. His name's Roy Mills. He still teaches there. Him and I still stay in touch because I taught there. I taught the University of Alberta for 10 years. I'm actually headed back in May to teach again. But we still talk, and I can't believe that was 20 years ago now that I was in that class, and he showed me the power of art. He saw that, I was a young man grappling with, mental illness and burning desire to give form to that formless space. And he really made me feel like this is important, and this is something you could do. And he was so unbelievably kind when a lot of people weren't kind. And without him, I would not be making art, because I would have never known it's a possibility. And I was lucky to have him a couple more times. When I did eventually after that, I went back to art school, and I had him as a professor a couple times. And I was really lucky to teach with him in the very class that I was first took with him, the very first intro to art. I taught that for about 5 years. And I tried to meet everybody the same way he did, that, you never know who you're going to inspire. And so without him, he's definitely somebody I stand on his shoulders.
That's amazing. And I keep hearing you say this word, kind. He was so kind. And he taught you how to be kind too, which is so important, especially in academia, where there's some people aren't, and there's no reason for them not to be. Do you want to cue up the final?
Yeah, maybe we'll end. It's just a 2-minute, the 2-minute and 23 seconds. It's a fun one to end with. So this is Jason. This is the beginning of our kind of TV show. This is the idea that the psychedelic puppets start their own psychiatric hospital, but they don't treat mental illness. They treat like maladies of the modern soul with absurdity. And so I think this will be a fun one to end on. I like that.
Okay, so we'll end on this. If you have any questions for Brad, put them in the Q&A now, because we want to make sure your questions get answered, and he's absolutely brilliant. So, all right, Brad.
Okay. I'll share this one with you.
Confidential psychiatric report. Patient: Edgar. Institution: the Council of Psychedelic Puppets. Bureau of Impulse Liberation. The patient presented with classic symptoms of self-curtailment disorder, a condition marked by solar plexus contractions, chronic anticipation of punishment, and a compulsive need to stay in line. Patient had internalized all major protocols of industrial obedience, clock worship, soullessness, and anxious hesitancy. Somersaulting impulses had been fully repressed. Urgent treatment was required. Intervention 1. Patient was escorted via space elevator into orbit and launched down a padded slip and slide from the stratosphere. Screaming turned to laughing by kilometer 7. Solar plexus spasms ceased. At sea level, he cried for 10 minutes, then performed an unsolicited cartwheel. Intervention 2. A multi-dimensional human slingshot device was employed. Edgar, in a chromatic leotard, was catapulted through a freshly stabilized stargate into hyperspace. He collided symbolically with Jungian archetypes, Freud's talking couch, and a slow-motion butterfly. Edgar turned to it and said, "You again." Witnesses reported a visible aura of reintegration. Final outcome: subject reconnected with the thrill of the slip and slide and the rush of ecstatic motion. Nervous system realigned with primordial play. Laughter reinstated. Compliance circuitry overwritten. Patient was discharged. Status: cured via absurdity. Filed by the Council of Psychedelic Puppets.
It's fantastic. And I just have to tell everyone watching that the full version all the way through is just capturing. I'm noticing though that AI still can't spell.
Well, it can now actually, but I purposely left those old AI versions of misspelling because it felt kind of more absurd that the puppets would spell where you can kind of read what it says, but you can't.
Okay, and everybody has the right number of fingers, which is great.
I think that's better, yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Well, it's amazing. So, Brad, thank you so much for joining us today. I want you to shamelessly plug, I know you've been putting things in there, but I want you to shamelessly plug all the work you're doing. So you're doing the residency program, which you just explained. Yeah. You're teaching in multiple places. Your art is well displayed at the Psychedelic Puppet Show on the web, also on Instagram.
On Instagram, yep.
Are we on Blue Sky?
No, I haven't used Blue Sky.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
So and they're great. The reels are great. Yeah. They're so fun. And even for kids, like kids are just, I mean, not that anyone.
Oh, my daughter who's 9 loves.
Don't want to be staring at phones, but for a brief moment, a funny story. Sorry, your daughter?
My daughter loves the Psychedelic Puppet Show. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but she's like, I love the visuals. So.
And so if this sort of work, if you're an artist, you know how to get a hold of Brad. If you're interested in supporting artists, you can go over to the Puppet Show and you can donate. You can look at all the projects there. There's also purchases and stuff that help support. Yeah. And again, 90% of that goes right back to artists. So more creation can happen. If you're a philanthropist or you own a business and you need some art, hey, I mean, there's some good commercial making in there too. So that is really cutting edge. But let me give the last words to you, Brad. What inspired the artists in all of us, and last words to you today?
Yeah, I think everybody can create, and that's what I think's kind of maybe the last thing I'll say is that's just something I just put up today was the idea of doing a psychedelics, mental health, and storytelling workshop. And, you know, I've had a lot of people like, you know, they know my work and all that, and they would love, and it would just be so much fun to get a group of people together to, you know, no matter what stage, you can be an artist, you can be a non-artist, you can be a clinician, you've got a lifetime of stories, you could be a patient that wants to figure out how to express that story. And, you know, I think there's something important about like pausing and like retreating into creative potential and just finding a place in the beautiful mountains, relaxing. You're living amongst other artists. It's a really cool experience, and I'm really hopeful that these workshops are going to work out, and people are going to get a lot from them. Coming to a really beautiful place with a good intention and with the right mentorship, I think can really transform people's lives. So even if you can't do it, definitely share it. Like I said, I might still keep tweaking the website because I just put it together over the past few days, but I think it'd be really fun to make that a more regular thing, just to mentor people like I do at the university, but in a really short time frame where you come out with something really exciting that you feel proud of.
I think that's really exciting. I think that what I love about this is I think so many people crave tapping into their creativity. And in fact, I was talking to a firefighter today, and they have all these stories, and I'm like, have you thought about putting them into film? And
Hmm.
now it's accessible,
It
right? Before
is.
you just have to write a screenplay and shop it around and hope you could find somebody, but now a person can learn some skills and they can tell their own story.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So we'll make sure we get them connected with you too, because
of
they
course,
have stories, they have fire department stories, and it ties into trauma and how psychedelics have helped that trauma so that they're thriving. So it's such an
of
important
course.
area. We all, mental health is so important for all of us, and we've all suffered in some way or another. So um,
Yeah,
thank you so much for
yeah.
doing
Well,
that.
thank you.
We've got all your sites here. We'll put them in the show notes too. Please, this will come out in the next week or two. Please share widely this with your friends, your artist friends, your non-artist friends. Check out the Psychedelic Puppet Show. Check out Brad's website at a positionretreat.com. Did I get
Yeah,
that
that's the residency website.
right? Check out the residency there. We'll put it all in the show notes, and go outside and make some art. And
Yeah,
such a delight, Brad. Thank you for joining us
yeah.
today.
Thanks, Pam.
And until next time,
Yeah. Okay.
take
See you
care.
all. Thank you. Bye.